Let's sit nice and tall. Close the eyes. Take a breath in and a breath out. And just really feel that you are arriving in this moment. Feel that you have landed gently. Or maybe your landing was a little rocky. Either way. But you're here. So know that you're here. Pay attention for a moment to how your body feels, to how the breath is connected to the body, and to the mind, to the spirit. Notice how in this moment, with your eyes closed, focusing on purpose, paying attention to yourself, how there's an expansive freedom. Nothing else is happening right now. Nothing. You don't need anything. There's no emergencies. There could be no distractions. There's just an expansive sense of peace and freedom that offers great relief to the heart, to the soul, to the mind, to the body. So drink that in. Drink in that freedom. Drink in that relief. Drink in that presence. And then gently flutter the eyes open. And just notice as you flutter the eyes open how the eyes are like heavy. You know, it's like they don't want to open all the way. And the face is light. And there's a real sense of presence. Life is like that, if we allow it to be. If we allow ourselves to be present, we'll be present. But we become so distracted by every little thing that as we grow, it becomes harder and harder to connect with that energy of peace within ourselves. One of the main reasons why spiritual sadhana is so important, because it brings us home. It brings us back to that inner peace, back to the inner resiliency, back to the spaciousness, back to a place where, in my experience, I feel like I'm free-falling almost, and I'm 100% okay with it. Like when I close the eyes, there's nothing there. There's no ground. There's no clouds. There's no snow. There's no sun. There's nothing. I just kind of feel like I'm free-falling or floating, you know? And if my eyes were open and I had that sensation, that would be a little disturbing. But with my eyes closed and calling myself home to my heart, it's fine. No disturbance at all. So this bringing ourselves back home to ourselves, even through the simple act of closing the eyes and taking a few breaths with surrender and with intention, does so much for us. It reconnects us to ourselves, reconnects us to Source, but in between those two things, it also works to alleviate our fear. And fear is a huge motivator in this life. Fear is responsible for 99.9% of our suffering. Because a lot of our suffering is projected into the future or dragged forward from the past. It's the fear of things happening again or of them not happening again. It's the fear that we're not enough or we won't be enough. It's the fear of the unknown outcome. So fear is responsible for like 99.9% of our suffering. It has an influence. There's other things too, of course, like shallow faith, anger, you know, but where do those things come from? Where does a reduced faith come from? From somehow being affected in this life and then becoming afraid because of that effect. And then that fear takes over, and we begin to see through eyes that are tainted because of that fear. But the more we come into our sadhana, the more we come into our spiritual practice, the more we come into service of humanity, the more we recognize there's really not very much at all under our control. And we can choose to be afraid of that, or we can choose to be present to it and just accept whatever comes our way. Like last night when it started snowing, it was so fun. We were in the midst of kirtan. We were chanting. Which one were we chanting? It wasn't Shiva. Was it the Narayani? We were chanting Om Narayani Om. And then when we opened our eyes, the snow was coming down like a blizzard. And everybody got, oh no. Oh, when will the roads be? What will this be? What will that be? Is it really going to happen? Are we going to get a snowstorm? They said we weren't supposed to have any more snow. Suddenly the heart became a bit tormented, you know? And it was our work then in that moment to bring ourselves back to understanding it's okay that it's snowing. It snows. This is February. It's not March yet. And even in March it snows, doesn't it? It's sometimes in April. So why the knee-jerk reaction that every single one of us had? Was because it was a reflection of the unknown. Many of us, if not all of us, had our hearts set on an early spring. Yay, no more snow. Well, there goes that control. Yeah, it really is amazing when you break it down to what's causing it. You know, it's like, oh my gosh, that really was a fear reaction that we all had. Like, it's snowing. Is the plow guy going to come? We're going to have to shovel the sidewalks. You have to be careful now going down the mountain. And that's what fear does to us day in and day out, is it causes us to be reactive and not responsive. If we're responsive, we can just look at the situation and recognize, you know, let me take a few moments now and see how to best negotiate and navigate through this. Can I do this without reacting? Maybe if I don't react, the outcome will actually be a little bit softer. It may not be what I want. It may not be what I intend. It may be something completely out of this world. But maybe it'll be a little softer because I'm not in hyper-reaction mode. So I wasn't sure where we were going to go today with the talk. I was teetering back and forth between letting you ask questions and talking on a topic, but I guess fear is the topic. Yeah, I guess fear is the topic. And what fear does to us and how important our spiritual practice is in relationship to healing the fear. To healing the fear. Like, what would life be like if your fear was healed? At least 5%. Think about that. If we live 80% of our life in a state of fear, and we reduce that by 5%, it's pretty powerful. That's pretty powerful. That brings us to 76% of life being lived in fear. But what will you do with that 4%? What will you do with that? What will you do with that opportunity to breathe? That opportunity to be awed by whatever it is that is around you? How will that affect you? How will you empower that 4% to further reduce your fear and thereby reduce your suffering? It's not a lot. You don't have to be like, no fear ever again, no. 100% annihilation of fear. It's not real. It ain't gonna happen. It's like, today, 100% awakened. That's it. No more ignorance. That ain't gonna happen either. It's just not. So we can look at this path of spirituality and say, well, it happens in increments, you know. Some days I'm more fearful, some days I'm less fearful, some days I'm more awakened, some days I'm way less awakened. So what would I do if I just wanted to have a little bit more of an increment? Just a little bit. And how would that affect me? My life, my relationships? Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, you don't have to go for the gusto. It'll happen on its own. All you got to do is think, what small part of my life right now, what little area can I reflect on where fear is affecting me and make some changes to be more resilient in the face of it? Everybody understands how fear functions in the physical body. Fear arrives. It sends nerve impressions to the brain. The brain translates those nerve impressions and sends out messages to the entire body to shut certain things down and to waken certain things up. It's called the fight or flight response. Non-survival oriented functions of the body shut down. Survival oriented function of the body wakes up. So your eyes see sharper. You start to breathe faster. Your reproductive system shuts down. Oh, really? Yeah, it's a non-survival function of the body. So the reproductive system starts to slow itself down so it's not using so much energy. So that energy can be then redirected to your eyesight, to your breathing, to your ability to run or fight or shake as you freeze. So the nervous system becomes heightened. And then, if that becomes a chronic place where you reside, then what we'll start seeing are issues in the reproductive organs. Yeah. You'll start seeing difficulty conceiving, painful menstruation, men with challenges like ED. You start to see so many different challenges in sexual health. You start seeing also a discomfort arising, a discomfort with one's own sexuality, with one's own physical look, all because of fight or flight in a chronic state. Fight or flight is good. It's healthy for you if it's healthy. But if that's the way you're living your life, not healthy. Because eventually it's going to weaken the non-necessary functions of the body in a more permanent way. And that's going to cause your mental, emotional, psychological state to suffer. And pretty soon, when you look in the mirror, you will not like what you see. Not because there's anything wrong with what you see, but because existing in a state of fight or flight, you cannot take the moment to connect with yourself, with your suffering, with your dreams, your aspirations, your well wishes for yourself, your health, your intentions. You can only continue to prepare for the next bomb to drop, for the next time to run. If you take the moment to connect, even a moment, what effectively has to happen for that is that the nervous system has to switch. It's like, you put your dryer on low, you put your dryer on high. Well, here is something similar. The nervous system has to switch. It has to switch from the reactive phase that it's in, of fight, flight, or freeze, to the parasympathetic activity of a form of relaxation or okayness. So it has to let go of whatever it's holding on to. You have to let go of whatever you're holding on to. And if you're existing in a state of chronic fight or flight, how difficult is that? Oh, no, it's cool. I go to yoga every week, It's good you go to yoga every week. It's absolutely fantastic. 5 times a week. 10 times a week. Just do it nonstop. It'll rewire the brain. It'll reinvigorate the nervous system. It'll move you away from the fight or flight. And it'll empower the systems of the body, like the reproductive system of the body, to be healthier. If the subtlest tissues in your body, according to Ayurveda, are your reproductive tissues. And they already have a hard time getting what they need because the gross muscle mass of the body takes so much energy. And yet, psychologically speaking, the reproductive tissues of the body are so intimately connected with your sense of self that if they suffer, you suffer. If they are depleted, you are depleted. If they're not thriving in a healthy physical environment, then you're not thriving in a healthy mental environment or psychological environment. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it pays for us, it's a benefit to us, it's good for us to look at the areas in life where fear is affecting us, and then to take the time to sit and to ask ourselves, what can I change? And to even write out a plan, like do a flow chart, flow chart. Yeah. Do a flow chart. And plan to work on one thing at a time, small increments. Because inevitably what you'll see is that as you start to address the areas in life where fear is dominant, and as you start to reclaim more empowerment in those areas, that empowerment will flow over into other areas of life. So let's say that you have a troublesome relationship with someone and it's argumentative. And too often you find that you are in a place of like not even wanting to see this person because you're just afraid of another encounter, another argument, another being put down. If you look at that relationship in isolation and say, well, I'm going to work on this right now. I'm going to work on how this relationship is impacting me, how I'm allowing it to affect me. The first thing that you have to understand is that in order to experience change, you got to do things differently. You have to do things differently. You have to change your mind. What do you have to change your mind about? Well, you may have to change your mind about the person. You may also have to change your mind about yourself. You do. You have to change your mind about yourself, and you have to change your mind about the person. You need to stop going into the situation with the assumption that this is what's going to happen. You ever do that? Like, oh, I just know when I see this person, this is going to be the reaction they have. I don't want to see them. And you tell yourself a whole story before it ever happens. So you've got to stop saying, this is what's going to happen. You have to stop continuing the story. Stop the story. Then, and maybe this is the hardest part, I'm not sure. And I've done this. I have done this on purpose in a really uncomfortable situation. And man, it worked. But I said to myself, okay, I'm going to use all these tools that yoga has shown me. And when I see this person, which inevitably I knew I was going to, instead of cringing and being like, I really just want to be nice and be kind, but I just know that, blood pressures are going to skyrocket. Instead of that, I'm going to breathe in, I'm going to breathe out. I'm going to listen intently if anything is said. And instead of reacting, I'm going to simply say, we disagree. That's all there is to say. May you have a blessed day. And I'm going to walk away. And I tell you, the person this happened with was years ago. When I saw them walking across the field, I knew that they were walking over to encounter me. And I was with my husband and I was with a friend also. And I paid attention, like I listened to what Thich Nhat Hanh said. I paid attention. I felt my blood pressure starting to, I felt my eyesight starting to sharpen. I felt my temperature starting to increase. I felt my internal self starting to vibrate, preparing. I said, no, don't prepare. Don't prepare. Stop. Breathe. And the person came up to me, and I just kept saying, listen, just listen, just listen. And the person came up, and they got right up kind of in my face. They're a bit shorter than I was, so it was kind of strange. That was like the first thing that hit me, like, that's very strange. You know? And then started to talk. And what the person said was, we were both teaching at a festival. And she said, what are they doing for you on the stage? What are they giving you? Because whatever they're giving you, they have to give me too. Whatever they do for you, they have to do for me too, because there can't be any differences in the way that they present you and the way they present me. And in that moment, I thought, oh my God, have I had something to do with this? That this person feels that much sorrow over their own uniqueness? And in that moment, my heart just kind of melted. And I just looked at her, and in a very soft voice, I just said, just go talk to the stage person. He'll give you whatever you need. Have a great class. And I walked away. And I kid you not, there was so much relief that I started laughing. And I wasn't laughing because I was like being mean. I was laughing because like, wow, there was this relief. I didn't have to be angry with this person anymore because I saw directly her suffering, and my heart melted to that. It melted to it. Her heart melts, that's her business, you know? But I didn't have to carry this anymore, and I no longer needed to be concerned about us running into each other and having awkward moments. Yeah, it's powerful when you make the choice to address one relationship. Don't make it the biggest, most challenging relationship. You got to build a little muscle first. But one relationship where maybe you tend to have some extra fear, animosity, anger. And just see what happens and how you feel when you're able to let that go, when you're able to be less reactive and more compassionate. The relief that follows is a small reflection of the power of the truth. The relief that follows any choice you make that is an honest choice is a small reflection of the power of the truth. The truth of what? Unity. The truth of unity. Stop looking at other people with eyes full of fear. And instead, look at them with eyes of compassion, peace, love. You don't have to run up and give them a hug. They don't have to be your BFF. They just don't. But you also don't have to carry that burden of keeping them purposefully at arm's length, you know, and preparing for battle every time. Because the preparation for battle is taking your nervous system and it's turning the switch over to sympathetic activity, fight or flight, or freeze. Where you could be turning it purposefully in the other direction, bringing it constantly into the sympathetic, a parasympathetic, into the relaxation, into the I'm okay in this moment mode. And the more that you can train yourself to do that, and it's for every one of us, every single one of us. without exception. The more we can train ourselves to turning to the parasympathetic more than the sympathetic, our lives will change so much. Our bodies will become healthier. Our minds will become healthier. Our digestion will be more appropriate. Our blood pressure will possibly regulate more appropriately. Our food will be welcomed into the body more effectively. We'll have regular bowel movements. And that matters. That absolutely matters. You ever meet a constipated person who's happy? No. And I have to say, I've asked that to hundreds of groups of people, and it never fails to get a laugh. Never fails to get a laugh. You know, because it's true. Like in your mind, you automatically come to the picture of the person who's constipated. They're like, you know. But constipated in body, constipated what? In mind. Constipated in the heart. Constipated in energy. If the physical body is constipated, then every other aspect of the being is also. But the more that you can reduce the fear, you won't eliminate it, but you can reduce it. Even a tiny percentage opens up the channels in the body and allows them to flow more freely. And the relief that you experience from that is a reflection of a small part of the greater truth of unity. That's powerful. Why is it related to unity? Because when we think we're separate, we suffer. Period. And all fear comes from fear of separation, or belief in separation, the story of separation. That's where all fear comes from. Separating me from you, me from God, me from nature, me from my job, me from whatever. It's all fear of separation. But the reality is that life is one continuous flow. So you feel like you're separated, life is still flowing. You're just the hiccup, saying, wait, but I'm separate, I can't flow. Wait, but I'm separate, I can't flow. All you have to do is stop saying, wait, but I'm separate, and just start flowing. So that coming back to the beginning of our session and where we closed our eyes, is practice for the free fall of the flow. Yes, you still have work to do. Yes, you still have to go to work. Yes, you still have to dot your I's and cross your T's. Yes, you still have to finish your school work, wherever and whatever it is that you're doing. Of course you still have to do that. But you can do it with less resistance. You can do it with less fear. You can do it with more engagement, more enthusiasm, with more love. You can just show up wherever you are in a given moment and just be with whatever that means. There's a time for fear. Fear has a purpose. Fear instigates the sympathetic activity of the nervous system, which will support you in surviving in situations that are detrimental to your survival. But day-to-day living isn't that. If a bear comes in that door right now, first of all, I'm going to be really impressed because he opened the door. But if a bear comes in that door right now, your state of fight or flight is going to go and skyrocket. And it will support you in surviving, in figuring out how to exit. Your state of fight or flight will also support you in figuring out how to support others in that life-threatening situation. But here's something really kind of interesting. If you exist in a state of fight or flight on a day-to-day basis because life is so full of fear, then when that bear comes in that door, you're already heightened. The ceiling is only so high. Your body can only take so much. And so you might not be able to respond or react in that situation in a way that could save your own life and maybe the lives of others because you've wasted your energy. It's all been directed toward day-to-day fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of the end of relationship. Fear of whatever. Where you didn't need to put that energy. You could have held it in reserve for when you actually need it. Does that make sense? They make a very big point about this in yoga. They say, conservation of energy. Absolutely important. In yoga, they say conservation of energy is absolutely important because whatever energy you are expending on fear and anger and, these out of control emotions that are not serving a purpose. If they serve a purpose, that's a different story. But don't be your own doctor and decide what serves a purpose and what doesn't all the time. Ask someone who knows or who you have, some thought, they have some wisdom, because you could very easily fool yourself. But anyway, I digress. So all the energy that you are putting out for that, you're not putting into your spiritual practice. You're not putting into your own awakening. Whatever energy you are expending out by eating poorly, resting poorly, exercising poorly, and by poorly I don't mean not, I mean it could be too much. It could be too little, it could be too much. By not having correct relationship, by grasping onto everything in life, money, fame, fortune, whatever it happens to be for you, then that is energy that you are not putting into your awakening, your spiritual upliftedness, your purpose, your dharma in this life. Make sense? Yeah. So you got to be a good banker of sorts, You got to know where to invest. And so when something happens and you're like, wow, I run into this person every so often, and this has been going on for like 10 years, maybe I need to redirect those funds to a different account. Because this hasn't served me. Nothing has been resolved. I don't even know why we're arguing. That's a big one. I don't even know why anymore. So look at things incrementally, one relationship at a time. And I don't just mean human relationship. I mean any relationship. Anything you interact with. One thing at a time. And as you resolve the fear and the conflict that the fear brings about in that relationship, it will spill over into others. And you'll find that the work becomes easier. A little bit easier over time. But as Patanjali said in his Yoga Sutras, any spiritual practice is only brought to a supreme level if that practice is done consistently over a long period of time with little to no interruption and with great enthusiasm. You have to care about what you're doing, and you have to care about it so much that it becomes a regular component of your life. And regular is not weekly. Regular is not even daily. Regular is what? Always. Absolutely, moment to moment. Always. Yeah, I saw a couple of faces. Didn't know spirituality was going to be so rigorous. Actually, living is rigorous. Being alive in a physical body is rigorous. Carrying all this fight or flight around is rigorous. Aren't your shoulders tired? Dear goodness, put it down. Oh, but it's too hard. It's too hard to sit in meditation. No. Put them side by side. Which one is more challenging? To continue to live like this? Or to open up and be a little more free? Questions or reflections? Thoughts?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So So I do this thing called abdominal therapy, and I have seen a correlation between people that have constipation with what you said, because the practice is, the intake form is a very complete intake form, and we discuss all kinds of things beyond the physicality. So in this application with the yogic perspective, what does diarrhea looks like?
Yeah, anger, pitta. Pitta, too much fire in the body, not enough water. Well, let me say that differently. Too much fire in the body that eliminates the water, which causes dehydration, which brings about a whole bunch of other issues. But yeah, diarrhea is pitta. It's fire element. And what's happening effectively is that it's melting. The fire is so hot that it's melting the stool. There's just entirely too much fire. So you have to look at that and say, well, what is fire? And what could this person possibly be interacting with that could be increasing fire in their body? Well, practically speaking, spicy food. So I had this young man I was working with over in New Jersey. Delightful young man. I worked with his whole family, both individually and then as a group. With spiritual counseling. And he came in one day and he's like, oh man, I've just been having so much trouble recently, like burping and diarrhea and I'm like, okay, well, let's take a look at that. What are you eating? And he's like, oh no, I eat really well. And everything else seemed to be in place. There wasn't anger issues, And I'm like, there's something. What are you not telling me? I said, what condiments do you use? Hot sauce. On everything. And not just a little. But, 3/4 of a bottle on the French fries. Talk about fire in the body. I said, you got to stop with the hot sauce. He went, huh? No. I don't want to. I said, well, then you can continue. So this is your choice. You either stop on the hot sauce or you continue to have these problems. And yes, you're young. Your body will compensate for now. But eventually what will end up happening is that you won't be able to compensate. And, the question you have to ask yourself with regard to all of these types of issues is, do I want to be able to walk into my 50th year, my 60th year, my 70th year, my 80th year, my 90th year, or do I want to be wheeled into them? Or do I want to be not walking into them? I mean, we have to look. We know that there's a lot of different influences in the way that we age, some of which we cannot control. So don't be flimsy with the ones you can. Because whatever life brings us, we do have the ability to empower ourselves at least a little bit to move through whatever we're faced with more gracefully versus less gracefully. So I got him to the point where he agreed that he would cut down. I said, okay, if you're not going to take it all the way out, then let's just cut down. And let's say no more than 3 drops. That was hard. But it literally cleared it up almost immediately. Because here's the thing, your body has this intelligence. It has a cellular intelligence. It knows what you're going to do before you know what you're going to do. It prepares. It says, oh man, she's thinking again. She's craving pizza. She's going to go get pizza. Okay, everybody get ready. This is the way the body reacts, right? It gets ready for whatever you send to it. So you're in a state of fight or flight or freeze before you even know you're in a state of fight or flight or freeze, based on your habitual behaviors, which we call samskaras. If you change your mind and you change your behavior, you're effectively changing the way that your body reacts to you. Oh, she's not going to go get pizza. Look at that. We can relax a little bit now. No indigestion today, thank you. And then they can take their cellular energy to something more efficient, something more useful. It's interesting to talk about the body like that, but really it's true. Every single cell in your body has intelligence. Did you know that? I mean, really, it does. Like every cell in your body has the capacity to think on its own, to act on its own. It's crazy. But when you're a little, tiny little, little incubus in there, your cells started to produce, and you produced a kidney cell. The kidney cell came forward. From where? Who knows? But it appeared. Quantum physics is awesome. Because, seriously, you started off as a blurb, right? Ovum and sperm. That's it. So where did all these other cells come from? Cell division, I know. They came from the quantum. But so this kidney cell comes forward. And this kidney cell knows it's a kidney cell. It knows it is not a liver cell. It knows it is not an eye cell. It knows it is not a heart cell. It knows it is not a blood cell. It knows it is a kidney cell. That is its identification. It knows what its job is. It originally appears around your big toe area, so somewhere toward the bottom of this little semblance of a body. Tiny. And once its friends show up, they come into community, and like Spider-Man, almost, they shoot fascia up to what will be the back wall of the body, right where the kidneys are. They climb up the little fascia. They embed themselves, and they stay there and become a kidney. Now, science was baffled by this, so they took a kidney cell and they tried to have a kidney cell become an ear. Wouldn't do it. They tried to have an ear cell become the skin on the back. Wouldn't do it. Instead, they grew an ear on the back of a rat. Crazy. The ear cell has the intelligence that it needs to be an ear cell. So your body is all these little consciousnesses that are both unified and individuated. And they all come together to create you, which is an individuated experience of consciousness within a larger community. And it goes on from there. So when you start to change your samskaric patterns, when you start to say, okay, pizza upsets my stomach, hot sauce makes me have diarrhea, your body knows that those are your samskaric patterns, and it reacts to them before you even know it's happening. Oh, stress is happening. Okay, get ready. Potato chips are coming. Your body knows already. But the moment that you make a different choice, your body receives relief, your mind receives relief, and your body recognizes that your overall being has the ability to change its mind, and it begins to trust a little bit. This is one reason why consistency is so important, because you make a good decision. We'll call it a good decision, a healthy decision. Your body is relieved. Then you go right back again. Your body is now not relieved. Oh, now they're flipping, flopping back and forth. Now your body doesn't know what you're going to do. And that's fight or flight. So when you come into your spiritual practice, you need to be consistent. If you're going to work with compassion, if you're going to work with love, if you're going to work cultivating healthier relationships, you need to do it consistently. That way you rebuild the bridge of trust between yourself, your physical body, and between yourself and your heart, and between yourself and spirit. Otherwise, what happens when someone doesn't tell you what they told you they were going to do? What happens when someone doesn't do what they told you they were going to do? Does it make you feel good? Little less trust? What happens when someone doesn't do what they told you they were going to do 10 times? What happens if someone shows up one day and doesn't show up the next day, and then shows up one day and doesn't show up the next day? No trust. What does no trust do to a body? Puts it into a chronic state of fight or flight and annihilates all bridges of trust, to the point where you look in that mirror that we talked about earlier and you don't trust the person in that mirror. Forget loving them. You don't trust them. Is that... Forget trusting anybody else. You have to trust yourself. That's what the spiritual practice brings you to, is the ability to trust yourself on all levels, in all combinations. Other questions? Did you have a question, Lori? Or a comment?
I was reflecting on the interaction that you had with that woman and how you got into a state where you were able to really see her or know her, and that brought relief, and that was such a gift then for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was thinking about when that, to be able to get there without necessarily knowing the person or knowing what their suffering is, but still being able to get there.
Yeah.
Would be such a relief and a gift, and yet it does help when you can see, when you can know what it is that they're suffering.
Absolutely.
But you don't always know.
No, and you don't have to.
And you don't have to, which is my point, but it's harder.
Yeah, it is harder. I used to study with David Life and Sharon Gannon of the Jiva Mukti community. And David came in to class one time, and he was talking about, he woke up that morning, and I don't remember the reason why he decided to do this, but I guess he wanted to deepen compassion, or he was, thinking about this. From his home, where he was staying, to the place where the class was, every single person that he encountered, he noticed he would typically walk with his head down, and then you only see people's shoes. And then you like people or don't like them based on their shoes. I don't like those shoes. I do like those shoes. I want those shoes. And he thought to himself, well, compassion requires presence. So what I'm going to do today instead is I'm going to walk over to where the class is, and I'm going to look in people's eyes as I'm walking past them. And as quick as I can do it, I'm going to tell myself their story. Say, married, long time, couple of kids, relatively happy, looks at another person and says, oh, they just lost a loved one. And this other person just lost a job. And this other person just had a birthday party. And he told himself a very short, quick story about each person. Was it true? Who knows? Yes, eventually, right? Doesn't everybody lose somebody they love? Doesn't everybody lose a job eventually? I mean, we all do. So what he was doing was he was using the human experience, the common human experience, to recognize that the details of the story are not as important as the fact that we all suffer. And we all experience happiness. And we all want to experience happiness. And we all do not wish to suffer. So if we can just look at another being and recognize somewhere in their life they're suffering, then we can hold that as a mechanism for listening. Because the words that a person says to you will tell you what you need to know. You don't really need to know anything more than that. You don't really need to know the intimate details of their life. Sometimes it helps. It helps if you want to support them, if you want to coach them, if you want to guide them. If they've asked for that, it definitely helps there. But that's not our relationships with people most times. It's very fleeting. And so it's difficult when someone comes through the door, bumps into you pretty abruptly, and you're like, hey, whoa, watch where you're going. It's like, how dare you do that to me? Well, but wait a minute, I don't really know where this person's coming from. Maybe they just had, a major fight with somebody and they're just suffering. Maybe they're late for their class. I've been late for class before too. I know what that feels like. Maybe they're just in a space where PTSD is occurring and they can't get out of the cloud. Everybody know the cloud? The PTSD cloud? It's the cloud of I can't see anything but the cloud. Can't see anything but the cloud. So maybe just knowing that there is a reason is enough. Yeah, I love that though, Lori. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for asking that question. The details are not always as important as just the understanding we all suffer. And then not to use that suffering as a pity party, right? Because there's a difference between looking at somebody with pity and looking at someone with compassion. Compassion is unifying. It's saying, we're alike, we're alike. Pity is saying, thank God it ain't me. We're not alike. No. Pity is looking at another person and putting them down. You don't look up at a person and pity them. You look down at a person and pity them. But when you have compassion for a person, you look up at a person because you recognize the sameness. Does that make sense? So take that word pity out of your vocabulary. No more pity parties. No more. Yeah. Don't feel sorry for people. People are not here because, living the life that they're living because it doesn't have a purpose. Instead of feeling sorry for people, pray for their purpose. Empower their purpose. Support their purpose. Recognize that. And then be a support. Because when we look and feel sorry for people, we're not necessarily supporting them. Maybe there's sometimes maybe, but generally speaking, feeling sorry for someone is pity. That's a harmful thing. And then typically somebody will ask, well, don't you think pity is okay? Sometimes? It's like, that's not the word you're looking for. It's not the word you're looking for. You're not using your English properly. Oh, the power of language. What word are you actually looking for? Because if the word pity is the word you're looking for, then you are existing in that moment in a state of fight or flight that won't happen to you. So we have to understand our languaging also. The way that we speak. Does that make sense? Yeah. Do a time check. We have enough time for one more question or reflection. Yes.
So you're talking about the duality of looking in at yourself, but also understanding compassion and what that means when those interact. For me, lately, I was recently told that I have too much of a bleeding heart, where it allows them to pull me back in every time, even though they know it's a sacredness. And I can't stop. I don't know how to not just be like, okay, and just go on with it. It's a very odd thing to be challenged with in a way of saying, well, how do I decrease who I naturally am to also support you in a way that you're asking to be supported, just in some convoluted way where I don't understand.
There's a lot of questions there.
I know, so I'm at it.
Yeah. So first of all, the person who is telling you have a bleeding heart is comparing you to themselves. So don't take their statement to be valid. The second thing is that really who you naturally are? Or is that who you have learned to be?
Well, it's definitely learned.
Okay.
Yeah,
so it's not who you naturally are. So take that out of your vocabulary when speaking about that, because every time you say it, you talk yourself into believing that you can't help it. It's not who you naturally are. It's who you have learned to be. Now, why have you learned to be like that? Where in your life did you feel that you had to take the burden of someone else's path onto your own shoulders and have ownership over it? Where in your life did you learn that? Sometimes acknowledging where it came from is helpful in resolving it. But then the other thing is to say that when you see this coming forward, and you do, you know when this is going to happen. It's almost like we learn how to recognize it, then we learn how to ignore it. Do it anyway. Yeah. Is to stop yourself and to say, I recognize what I'm about to do, and I'm going to try something else. I'm going to try maybe, I recognize that this is a difficult time that you find yourself in. And I am here to support you in whatever reasonable way I can. But there are some things you are going to have to do on your own in order to build enough strength to change this. And then let them have what belongs to them. Their path does not belong to you. And oftentimes when we become highly involved in someone else's path, we're doing so out of avoidance of our own. So there comes a moment where you have to stand up and recognize what belongs to you and what doesn't belong to you. And it's not like saying, here, this is yours, No. It's always the way it is done. And the way it is done can be empowering. It can be to say to them, I'm on your side. I'm cheering you on. I recognize. I have faith in your ability. You have a hard road ahead of you. And just know that if there's something that I can reasonably do, I'm happy to talk to you about it. I have lots of people I can refer you to. You have to have a referral list, right? Yeah. And then back away, step away from the drama, and know that you have held yourself accountable to your path. And then go do something on your path. Go meditate. Go sit and chant. Do your practice, whatever it happens to be. But learn how to take more energy into yourself and not from other people. It's hard.
Yeah, it brings in like the balance of it a lot. Because balance of what's actually serving at that moment, but also move along about what that really is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. The first kind of thing is don't take other people's opinions as the truth. The second thing is recognize what belongs to you and what doesn't belong to you, and why you're behaving like that's not. It's not who you naturally are. Who you naturally are is a witness. Who you naturally are is a witness. A witness. Not a dictator or an accumulator of other people's energetic patterns. You're there to witness. Even in your job, if your job is to interact with people and provide service for them, you're still there as a witness. You're not there to condemn. You're not there to executioner. You're not there to judge. You're not there to do any of those things, spiritually speaking. You're there to witness. You ever do something in your life and you're like, wow, I just wish somebody saw that. Right? The heart wants to be witnessed. It's like darshan. Laura, you were in last night. Yeah. It's like darshan. So at the end of Arati, we sit here and we stare at Ganesha. We're receiving darshan. Darshan is the act of seeing and being seen. And that, on a spiritual level, is what every heart longs for, is to see clearly and to be seen clearly. And when you look at another person and you say, I'll take that for you, you're not seeing that person clearly. You're trying to make them into something that makes you a little more comfortable. instead of empowering them to do it themselves. And it's so much more beautiful when they're empowered. It's so much more beautiful when people are empowered. Right? We want to see each other thrive. Yeah. Absolutely. So don't be controlling. Let people have room and space. Yes?
Sometimes they have no interest in being empowered. And the fact
That's-
that you're empowering yourself is a threat to them.
And
And it's very difficult when it's someone very close to you.
yeah, absolutely. And then you need to have strength. Strength to recognize that that is their fear. Brings us back to the fear, so thank you. That's their fear. I won't know you if you're a complete person. I won't know you if you have peace inside of you. I won't know you. I won't be able to relate to you. Our relationship will change. It's all the fear. So then you have to have strength and courage to continue anyway. And if the person falls away, then they fall away. And that's hard, I know. It's so hard. It's like I don't want to hear that, and yeah, we don't want to hear that. But the reality is, and we can't make this judgment. They have to make the decision. It's hard for us to make this judgment, but sometimes if they stay, it's hurtful. They suffer because of it. So give them the free rein. Let them make their own decision. Don't make it for them. If you're happy to stay, then stay. But don't stay and be less of a person than you are. Be who you are. Be strong, be courageous. Stand in your own shoes. And if they choose to stay with you, then wonderful. Just know that that's a sign in and of itself. But if they choose to go, let them. Because that's also a sign. Yeah. All right. So let's sit tall. Close the eyes. Take a nice breath in, a nice breath out. Feel relief. Relief that comes from the breath. Relief that comes from a little bit of understanding. Relief that comes from community. Relief that comes from love, peace. And place the right hand on the heart, left hand over the right. And we'll lift our voices in one Om. Take a breath in. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May all beings everywhere find peace, love, light, and happiness. May all beings know their oneness. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Namaste. Thank you all so much for being here today. So wonderful to gather with each and every one of you. We will have Arati in about 10 minutes. So if you would like to join us for that, please do. If you're heading out now, please have a peaceful, wonderful day. Make sure you have some food because it smells good. It always does.
It always does.
It's like there's never been a time.
It always does.
And I'm not sure how high that ceiling is, but they just keep going up. Wonderful. All right, everybody.